The Val and Dauntless were built based on different approaches to naval air power. One struck fear with its long range and precision, while the other earned its place in history with resilience and devastating war-changing impact. The Aichi D3A1 Val was Japan's primary carrier-based dive bomber, and it reflected a philosophy of simplicity and efficiency suited to Japan's limited industrial base. Its low-mounted rounded-tip wings contrasted with the shorter tapered wings of the US SBD Dauntless. While not truly elliptical, the Val's wing design emphasized ease of manufacture and stable lift rather than a maximum aerodynamic efficiency. By comparison, the Dauntless's wing structure, though less refined, was stronger and better suited for steep, high-speed dives. The Val's fixed, spatted landing gear simplified maintenance, but it created drag. The non-retractable landing gears also limited top speed and dive precision, but this was an accepted compromise in exchange for reliability and reduced complexity. The Dauntless's retractable gear and dive brakes enhanced accuracy, but required more maintenance. Weighing lighter than the Dauntless, the Val gained agility, faster acceleration, and lower stall speeds. These traits improved carrier landings and dive handling, but were achieved by sacrificing armor and crew protection. Powered by a 980 horsepower Mitsubishi Kinsei engine, the Val climbed at about 9 meters per second, slightly outperforming the heavier Dauntlesses at 8 meters per second, despite its stronger 1200 horsepower Wright 1820 engine. The Val also had superior range, which was a decisive factor in the vast Pacific theater, though it carried a lighter payload at just 370 kilograms versus Dauntless 544 kilograms. Its lower wing loading yielded excellent maneuverability, with an estimated 260 meters turn radius, and required 30 meters less deck run for takeoff. This enabled Japanese carriers to launch strikeways more quickly. However, in dive bombing, the Dauntless held the edge. Its hydraulically actuated brakes allowed safe dives at 410 miles per hour, which maximized accuracy. The Val's drag-limited dives were capped around 350 miles per hour. Still, the Val's simpler design meant faster production at just 4,800 labor hours and less maintenance, 8 hours per 10 flight hours. This was critical for Japan's smaller industry. Ultimately, the Val embodied a pragmatic efficiency by being lighter and more agile, as well as having greater range and easier upkeep. On the other hand, SBD Dauntless emphasized accuracy, survivability, and destructive power. This highlights how industrial capacity and strategic doctrine shaped two distinct approaches to carrier-based dive bombing in World War II. The Aichi D3A1 Val dive bomber reflected Japan's emphasis on simplicity, range, and maneuverability, contrasting with the American SBD Dauntless, which prioritized survivability and precision. Though the Dauntless was marginally faster at 410 kilometers versus the Val's 389 kilometers, the difference was negligible at typical strike altitudes. The Val's lighter airframe allowed quicker acceleration and tighter turns, aided by lower wing loading. This gave it better low-speed handling and safer carrier landings, which were crucial on Japan's smaller decks. However, the Dauntless was engineered for stability in steep dives, making it more accurate despite being less agile. Range marked the Val's greatest strength at 1,480 kilometers compared to 1,115 kilometers for the Dauntless. This longer reach could be achieved despite carrying less fuel at just 770 liters. This enabled Japanese carriers to strike distant targets without constant repositioning. Endurance followed suit, with the Val able to remain airborne about 4.5 hours compared to the Dauntless at just 3.1 hours. Its faster climb rate and quicker acceleration added to its tactical flexibility. Aerodynamic efficiency also gave the Val a superior glide ratio. Structurally, the Val could withstand up to 7.5 Gs, which was slightly more than the Dauntless at 6.9 Gs. Yet this came at a cost, which included reduced armor and unprotected fuel tanks. The Val's weaker defensive armament left it highly vulnerable to enemy fighters and ground fire. By contrast, the Dauntless's rugged construction, self-sealing tanks, and better crew protection made it far more survivable. The Val offered agility, range, and operational economy, while the Dauntless delivered accuracy, toughness, and pilot protection. The Aichi D3A1 Val was more than just a dive bomber. It was designed to hit targets very precisely. Its strong, stiff wings bent very little in sharp pullouts, so the plane shook less during dives. This gave pilots a steadier aim and cut bombing errors by dozens of meters. The Val usually dived at steep angles of around 70 degrees, which made bombs more accurate than shallower dives. Its fixed landing gear, though it added drag, helped keep the plane stable in dives and slowed it in a predictable way. This steadiness meant bombs fell more consistently, with less variation than in some US dive bombers like the SBD Dauntless. Pilots also used strict release procedures, usually dropping bombs from 600 to 800 meters. With bomb fall times of about 10 to 12 seconds, the Val's reliable timing and steady aim further improved accuracy. The plane's light weight gave it better handling at slow speeds. It could land safely on short carrier decks and gave pilots more time to aim during dives. In emergencies, it could glide farther than the Dauntless, for about 36 kilometers from 3,000 meters, which gave crews more options if the engine failed. Japanese tactics made these strengths even more effective. Val pilots typically attacked in tightly timed groups, releasing bombs within just a few seconds of each other. This concentrated attacks, putting multiple hits close together on critical ship areas like engines or magazines. Reports suggested that single attack waves sometimes achieved hit rates of 40 to 60%. Trained crews also could correct small errors between runs, which reduced overall bomb spread even further. Yet the Val still had weaknesses. It relied heavily on clear skies, and accuracy often dropped at low light situations or in poor weather. But when conditions were right, its design, tactics, and disciplined crews made it one of the most accurate dive bombers of its time. At Pearl Harbor in December 1941, 129 Vals took part in the attack, helping damaging or crippling 5 of 8 U.S. battleships. Its long range and coordination made Japan's early strikes effective, while the Dauntless was designed with more focus on toughness and crew safety. In April 1942, during the Indian Ocean raid, Val sank the carrier HMS Hermes and the cruisers HMS Cornwall and Dorsetshire. Their extended range allowed operations over greater distances than the Dauntless, though U.S. dive bombers benefited from better armor and self-sealing fuel tanks. The Val played a major part in battles through 1942, such as Coral Sea, Midway, and Santa Cruz. At Coral Sea, they struck USS Lexington, and at Midway, they scored fatal blows on USS Yorktown. Yet the Dauntless proved decisive by sinking 4 Japanese carriers at Midway, and single-handedly turned the tide of the war. At Santa Cruz, Vals damaged USS Enterprise and USS Hornet, but Dauntlesses again ensured better pilot survivability. By the end of the South Pacific campaign, the pre-war elite Val pilots were nearly annihilated. The Val performed best when in coordination with torpedo bombers, often combining hits for devastating results. Early in the war, Val sometimes needed fewer bombs to sink ships compared to the Dauntless. However, the Dauntless generally carried heavier bomb loads, giving more destructive power for each hit. The Val created strong psychological impact among Allied ship crews, whom described Val's diving attacks as greatly intimidating. Still, with only about 1,495 were built and heavy losses in the first 18 months, only a few remained in later months of the war. By contrast, nearly 6,000 Dauntlesses were produced and remained effective until its withdrawal from frontline service in 1944. So, is the Aichi D3A1 Val better than SBD Dauntless? They were each superior in different contexts. The Val's superior range, agility, and stability gave Japan devastating early war accuracy, sometimes reaching 80% hit rates. Its lighter design suited offensive operations in 1941-42. The Dauntless, however, proved reliable and decisive in ideal conditions. With armor, self-sealing tanks, and a heavier 544-kilogram bomb load, the SBD Dauntless have a good chance of inflicting serious damage. Though less agile, it was rugged and accurate, as shown by the sinking of 4 Japanese carriers at Midway. Thank you for watching, and see you in our next videos.